It's time for the monthly Q&A, so post your questions down below and let's begin. Hello Alex, is it okay to do the program with the same sets and reps forever as long as I rotate exercise variations every 3 to 4 weeks when I get to intermediate and advanced? Or would you still consider that too minimalist? Thanks if you answered. Well, you're rotating exercises, so that's not minimalist. Actually, what you're doing is pretty much within that range where the biological law of accommodation kicks in. And the way that you're overriding it is through exercise rotation. I don't see a problem with that whatsoever. The only thing is you got to factor in your experience level and for which movements are being swapped. Like if it's the main exercise, say doing a 1 rep max on the bench press, and you're going to keep doing that every single week, it's not going to work. You're going to start getting some overuse problems and the plateaus are going to kick in real fast. So for the max effort exercise specifically, you have to rotate every week. And intermediates can often push to 2 weeks, but you know what? In my experience of dealing guys who train this way, rotating every single week is the best. So for that, as frequently as possible, right? But for the secondary lifts, yeah, you can often push that for 3 weeks, especially if you're incorporating 3-week waves, which I actually did a full video on the subject. So week 1 could be 3x10, week 2, 4x10, week 3, 5x10. Then you rotate the lift, restart the entire process. Or simply incorporating dynamic effort waves. So there's methods to doing it. 4 is not something that I would typically advise. I mean, it could be done, but you're kind of pushing it in my opinion. If you can do 4 weeks or more, say 4 to 6, that should be for little fluff accessories, like maybe a bicep curl at the very end or a band face pull, stuff like that. The isolation exercises that aren't too taxing on the body, that don't require much rotation at all, right? But no, I would not consider that minimalist whatsoever, bro. Like if you're actually rotating lifts and you're addressing your weaknesses and your volume and intensity is correctly managed, who cares if it's the same sets and reps? Like that doesn't matter. Your intensity day could be 1 rep maxes followed by 3x3s, and your volume day could be 3 sets of 8 to 12 for everything. I don't care what it is. Like sometimes it's good to simplify things instead of changing everything. Like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna do 10 sets of 10 one week, and then next week I'll be doing 5x5s. Like the more you try to manipulate the volume and intensity and actually stay away from your total weekly workload, the worse the gains are gonna be on a concurrent system. So obviously there are ways to mix them, but it's more complex. And what you're suggesting to me right now is very simple. And I think a lot of guys in the fitness community, that's what they got to start doing first to get an idea of how concurrent periodization functions. So enjoy the gains, my friend. Hey, Alex, I was wondering if, for example, for my push intensity workout, I do bench, OHP, and tricep extensions. Should I use those same exercises of the push volume workout that follows? Yeah, you can totally do that. A lot of guys, they prefer to keep everything the same. I would say that as long as you're rotating exercises and you're doing it before the overuse kicks in or before plateaus set, I don't really have an issue with it. But personally, in my years of experience doing concurrent periodization, I can tell you that having different exercises for each day is better. It does a better job at raising your overall general strength and you feel more fresh, better recovery as well. And the thing is, it's less psychologically draining, knowing that everything is being swapped through. And different days can emphasize different things. Like your intensity day could be what you mentioned, and then volume, perhaps a close grip bench. And instead of an OHP, you do OHP with chains. And then an extension, you could switch to dumbbells. So the exact same movements, but just modifying things very slightly. I believe you'll be able to push your movements for a little bit longer, and it makes more sense from a programming standpoint. That's just what I found to be best. But if you want to keep it exactly the same, hey, that's fine too. Hey Alex, I was maxing out on weighted dips and I suddenly got lightheaded after working up to heavy singles and felt like I was going to pass out. Do you think this is because the valsalva maneuver in conjunction with tight weight belt, which was kind of constricting my abdomen? Or do you think low rest intervals have something to do with it? Do you have any advice? Okay, it's a lot of things going on here. First of all, low rest intervals should not be used under any circumstances. Like never, ever do low rest intervals when you're maxing out. Doesn't make sense. If you're doing real attempts, let's say 3 to 4 max in a workout, you should be resting at least 3 to 5 minutes between sets when using the max effort method specifically. And for your last attempt, it can even be higher than that. You know, like when I did my weighted dips, look outside. It got darker. On my last set, I rested 8 freaking minutes. This is very common in powerlifting, by the way. When you're at a meet and you're waiting for other competitors, you think you're resting 30, 60 seconds? Hell no, bro. This is not hypertrophy work on the side. This is your main movement, and you can't afford to have fatigue. That's very dangerous as well. So that's the main issue. And then the belt could be on too tight. First of all, why are you wearing a belt while doing weight dips? Are you talking about the one that's already suspended? Because that thing shouldn't be tight in the first place. That doesn't really make sense. But if you're talking about you have a weighted dip belt plus another belt on top of it, that is strange to me. So I would definitely get rid of that right away. But I don't think that's what you're talking about here. Then the final thing is the valsalva maneuver. Some people say that that could be problematic, but in my opinion, it's the way that you do it. Like, you gotta be breathing low, not high. The air shouldn't be all up in here. So you have to learn how to do the valsalva properly. Like for me, that's pretty much the only thing that I do when lifting heavy ass weights, max effort method. I've been doing it for years and years and years, never had a single problem. Only time I had issues was years back with squats. I would get neck pain and exertion headaches. But actually I made a video talking about how to correct that, right? And it was basically training the neck directly, focusing more on hydration, and actually maxing out on a frequent basis. And that's my final advice for you, my man. Like, how often do you max out? Because the more you do it, the better you get at it. Start to find your groove in a variety of different exercises, and the strains just go away. You don't feel the aches. And I think that's what's affecting a lot of guys. Like, they're just not used to lifting heavy. Because when you use it on a frequent basis, it's just normal. That's what you do. So those will be my piece of advice for you. Hey Alex, if I just do neck curls with no neck extensions, will I get muscular imbalances in my neck that will affect my posture? You might. That's entirely possible. But to what extent? And it is as bad as the other scenario, which is only doing extensions. Here's what I can say. If you're doing a lot of deadlifts and rows and just shrugs, actually especially shrugs, back your neck will still be worked. It's just that it won't be maximized. So I think it's probably better to do neck curls only if we're talking about neck imbalances specifically, whereas the other situation can cause forward head posture. So I don't think it's a huge issue for a lot of guys if they just did neck curls, but then again, it comes down to what you want out of neck training. I can tell you right now that for overall mass and general neck strength, this is not optimal. You're missing out on other features. The side neck work, which it's similar to the neck curling, but you get extra benefits. And then the neck extensions. Neck extensions are very useful, especially for safety squat bar work or heavy squats in general. Any exercise where there's a lot of axial loading. So to me, it's more so the fact that you're gonna have a strength imbalance and possibly aesthetics, not an actual posture problem. Because if anything, most guys are too much in extension and they need to do more neck curls. So from that, you should be okay. What do you think about 5-day upper lower split with 5th day as arm day and do push-pull supersets on upper days? The push-pull supersets are fantastic. I made a full video on this subject, and actually Brian Allister has been talking about this for years. So nothing wrong with that. In terms of the 5-day split itself, how exactly are you going to structure that? The way that I see it, you would do upper lower arms. So Monday to Friday, no breaks. That does work. But if using concurrent periodization, which I highly recommend, 72 hours split between those sessions is better. So that's why I'm going to say it depends what type of system you're running. If it's just a classic bodybuilder setup, maybe you're not maxing out once a week or whatever, then I would say it's probably fine. It's probably going to work. Just make sure you're eating properly and everything. And no, it's going to work. Plus you get a little bit of rest. Lower body training, that's a little bit of a break. And it beats the freaking arm days on classic bodybuilder routines where you have shoulders the day before. Like, there's actually overlap in that. Whereas a lower body day before arms is not that problematic. So I think that's what you're talking about here. Unless you're referring to a classic upper lower, like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and then arms are maybe on the Saturday. That could work, but you're going to get less recovery from that, especially if it's a high volume bro day, you know? Your Sunday alone is not going to cut it. By the time you got to lift heavy on the Monday, especially if you're maxing out, you're not going to be there, man. So that's not what I would advise. So if you're doing a regular bodybuilding type program, not concurrent, yeah, this can probably work. Yo, Alex, do you train your lower back? And if so, what are the best ways to train it? I absolutely do, but not through regular movements, you could say. Like, most people do hyperextensions. For me, it's reverse hyperextensions if I go to gym, or my DIY setup over here with the freaking board. But that's like little stuff I do at the end of my workouts, right? The main exercise is the good morning. That is the hip hinge of my choice. And does a great job of building up that lower back strength. Like, actually, when I started doing good mornings, you may not believe me, but I began with 45 pounds, the empty bar. I wanted to nail my form. I wanted perfection. I wanted to really learn that proper movement pattern, even though it's similar to RDLs and all that, right? Actually, it's more of a hinge if you look at the squat hinge continuum. But yeah, I started with 45 pounds, empty bar, really trying to build that work capacity because it's not really a high blood flow area, you could say. So I started with that and I worked my way up to the point where it's become a main exercise. And now that's completely replaced deadlifts. I'm gonna make a video on that soon, right? But it's like that movement by itself does wonders. Then also for accessories, I throw in the band good mornings. So that's like another exercise that I do on top of regular good mornings. So that's basically what I'm doing right now. My lower back is the strongest that it's been in years. Like, I can probably do some conventionals right now and not get pain. I might be sore for a week, probably gonna have horrible recovery because of my leverages for that exercise. But hey, I could probably do without pain because I focus on the lower back and the abs too. I started doing weighted crunches again. I'm doing weighted leg raises. I'm really maximizing my programming, not being lazy with the lower body anymore. There was a long time that I was lazy, but not these days. So the main thing is good mornings on top of freaking good mornings. And then the rows are helpful too, but I don't consider them to be a main builder. It's just to help stabilize, But that's what I do. Back then it was variations of deadlifts in addition to rack pulls, block pulls, and then lots of reverse hypers and some occasional hyperextensions. I had a deload week and I lost on squat and deadlift strength, but on upper body lifts, strength stayed the same. Why I lost so much strength on lower body, and this always happens when I come back after a deload. Okay, if this always happens when you come back from a deload, you probably didn't need it. Or your programming is just really bad and that's what's going on. Or maybe you just didn't eat at all. Perhaps your appetite was significantly lower since you weren't training and you ended up being in a calorie deficit. That's why the performance loss occurred. You just depleted yourself like crazy. So there's a lot of factors to consider here, but if you're coming back from a deload way weaker, that's a problem. Because usually you deload after overreaching. That's how it works. Or you deload before a problem is going to kick in. But you don't just lose your strength. Like if you take 7 days off from squats, hell, not even doing a deload, literally a complete freaking break, you don't lift at all, your one rep max should be the same. Dude, you don't lose the ability to squat. So the reason why this is happening to your lower body is because you haven't hit that point yet of overreaching. You probably don't need it. Maybe you're running some routine that tells you got to deload every couple weeks. Like you're just forcing it in, but you don't actually need it. Or like I said, it's nutrition. A lot of guys, lower body training makes them super hungry. So when they drop it or they go not as hard on it, they're not eating as much. So many factors, but to me, I would look at the programming. There's probably an issue over there. Hey Alex, what are your thoughts on seated barbell shrugs? There's different ways to do them, but when you do seated barbell shrugs behind the back, the stretch on the traps is absolutely insane. Like I remember the first time I did those, dude, it felt like rack pulls above the knee all over again. And because of the leverages involved, it's a shrug that allows you to lift a lot of weight, but in a strict manner. Like it's not a power shrug, it's a strict shrug, but it's easier than just standing up. It's hard to explain, but you gotta try it out. Like it's a very good lift for sure. I've done that with dumbbells and the barbell, but probably the best one that I like is just seated with the barbell behind your back. It's great. I can't really say anything bad about it, but like other movements, there's nothing magical about it. It's just another exercise in the toolbox. You rotate it through to prevent overuse and maximize your strength gains. On dynamic effort days, you're meant to use 40-60% of one rep max with bands. Which band should you use? And is it 40-60% of straight weight one rep max? Yeah, it's typically 25% band tension. And I think Louis Simmons is now claiming 33% based off the one rep max for that exercise. So it's not 25% band tension of say 40-60%. No, it's 25% of the actual one rep max, period. That means the bands that you use are going to vary depending on your strength level. The stronger you are, the more bands you're going to need. But for a lot of you who do speed work, micro mini bands, and monsters is all you're ever going to need. Like I don't see many of you dealing with the lights unless you're not doubling them. Like if you're not doubling the bands, honestly, you have a lot of options. And that's why like it's not a set rule in stone. Just get around 25% band tension and base it off your current strength level and the one rep max for that lift. But it depends on the exercise, right? For benching, you might be using doubled micros. On your squats, it could be standard mini bands. It totally depends how strong you are right now. Really, experience level is everything. So I can't tell you. Just figure out what that 25% band tension is in terms of absolute number and then replicate that with the bands, whatever's appropriate for you. I can't tell you what that is. Deadlift versus RDL for bodybuilding hypertrophy. Which gains the most mass if I can only do one? Hands down RDL. I would never do deadlifts as a hypertrophy exercise. Yeah, you'll get jacked from doing it, but it has a terrible stimulus fatigue ratio. And I don't see the point when RDLs can give you all the benefits while actually having a little bit more from a bodybuilding standpoint because there's a stretch reflex in the hammies. So that's pretty badass in itself and using a lot less weight. So it's an exercise that lends itself well towards higher reps. That's what I would do if you're a bodybuilder. Like why are bodybuilders doing deadlifts on a back day, for example? Or why are they doing it on a lower body day if it's not low reps specifically? Why the f are you going to do 5 sets of 10 on a conventional deadlift with say 4 or 5? Why? To me, that's a misallocation of resources. It's going to beat you the hell down and you might not be able to handle as much moving forward from that workout because there's way too much fatigue being generated. So it's not that you're not going to build mass from it. Like deadlift is a great mass builder when appropriate volume is used and if you get very strong. It's just that for bodybuilding, there's better tools. And to me, that would definitely be good mornings. I think good mornings are number one for this. You're still getting that hip hinge in, but because of moment arms, you're lifting a fraction of the weight. So you can get a really good workout in 135. And Actually, that's why I think they're better than RDLs as well. That's a different topic altogether. RDLs would be my choice for sure. Hey Alex, if I'm doing full body 4 times a week, should I do the same routine and then rotate the movements every week or do different exercises each day? Again, it depends if you're doing concurrent or not. On a maximized programming, the more frequently you're training, the more frequently you have to rotate. Simple as that. If you're doing 4 times a week, I'd recommend different exercises for each day. Otherwise, you're going to see the plateaus kicking in and overuse is going to arrive much quicker. It's just the way it is when you're doing high volume and high intensity at the same time with the frequency on top of it. It's one of the reasons why I discontinued the Alpha Body. It was a great system. It was very good. Like when you auto-regulate it the proper way, it's fantastic. The gains are going to be through the roof. But you're not maximizing recovery. And that's why I don't buy into the super high frequency full body ideology, especially in the context of a concurrent program. Like to me, twice a week is the way to go, or just doing 3 times a week, heavy, light, medium. Like the extra day, the fact that it harms your recovery makes it less worth it. Plus, it's so much harder to program, man. But yeah, I don't think I really answered your question properly, but if you're doing 4 times a week, I would have different exercises for each day. Don't make it the exact same workout every single time because the gains are going to slow down much faster and overuse is more likely to occur. So that's my advice for that, man. Okay, guys, last question. Hey, Alex, how often and how many exercises should I max out per week? Again, it depends on your routine. If you're doing a concurrent program, which is what I advise, it's going to be 1 time a week for your upper body, 1 time a week for your lower. And sometimes that can also include push-pull. So you might max out on your bench at the start of the workout, then you're maxing on your pull-up right after. You can certainly do that. But I would not say the same for lower body. So if you max out on the squat, I would not max out on the deadlift right after. You can still do heavy singles. You can do 3 sets of 190%. You can do 3x3. You can still do high intensity, but I wouldn't do twice maxing out within that exact workout for lower body. If you really want to max out more frequently than that, you can do it on a separate day. So a max effort squat day and a max effort deadlift day. But then also the movements themselves have to be modified a little bit to be more specific to that given exercise for the day. I think that's better in terms of overall programming, right? And then for upper body, you can do that as well. Like you can have 1 day you're maxing out on the bench, another day on the overhead press, or twice a week maxing out on the bench, but the different styles completely. Like if you're going to do this, don't make it the same style. That's all. And recognize too that the more frequently you max out, the harder it's going to be on your recovery. Like this is not for everybody. I don't think I would recommend this for most lifters. I think the classic volume day, intensity day is the best way to manage everything year round while minimizing a lot of problems that you might get from more complex programming, even though that works very well. That's the max that I would do personally on a concurrent routine. You're maxing out twice on the bench and then twice on lower body, squat dead. So that's it, man. I hope you guys enjoyed this Q&A video. Post more questions in the comments section. And I'll see you in the next one.